at the Benzinga Cannabis Capital Conference with Tim Seymour. I'm sure you'll recognize him from his time at CNBC. Tim?
Well, thank you. Great to be here. You know, ultimately, investing in emerging markets is really, especially early stage, is about understanding your macro, getting your macro right, and understanding the tailwinds from those macro trends. Obviously, in cannabis, there's, you know, whether it's the regulatory framework, whether it's the legal framework, whether it is, you know, truly the demographics that are going on. You know, people used to get so excited about talking about the growth in India and the Indian consumer.
Yeah,
well,
I remember.
People should be as excited about the growth in the consumption trends for not just millennials, but then, you know, people that are 40, 50, 60, 70 years old. So, you know, that's why I'm here, and I sit on the board of a couple companies. I've been investing in the space for you know, 3 or 4 years at this point, so public and private companies. And by the way, 5 p.m. every night, I'm on a TV show where we talk about markets, and being able to talk about the cannabis industry to a broader audience, I think is not only, you know, exciting. It's a lot of responsibility in a sector that's, you know, money's falling from the sky, or so it seems. But, you know, obviously that should raise a lot of caution flags for investors, and I think a lot of investors have made some mistakes along the way.
So what would the advice of investors then?
The most important thing, they have to do their work. They have to get as much insight into the balance sheets and the operations of the company. But ultimately, right now, especially in early stage companies, it's really all about the management team.
Yeah.
I would rather be investing in a company that had A+ management team, but maybe, you know, a B product or business model that was, you know, was not jumping off the page at me, versus someone who I think, oh wow, what a very clever product, but this management team to me is not very talented, and I'm not sure they're going to get this done. Investors have to do their work, whether there's obviously plenty of analysts out there talking about the cannabis sector right now, but I think it's imperative that investors actually really understand what the alignment of interests are, where the company is in their capital market cycle. The other very important thing just in the public markets is how these stocks trade. They, in many cases, they trade either by appointment or with very little liquidity. There's 10 stocks that trade with a lot of liquidity, and that's great. But those are the 10 stocks whose valuations, you know, arguably are the most overpriced,
or the ones that are being extremely short. Right.
That's right. So. The market dynamics of investing in the sector, so understand liquidity, understand where your stock trades, understand what the catalysts are, understand the corporate structure, because what we're seeing in the sector today is that there's an enormous amount of capital markets activity where either, you know, firms have stakes, have converts, have warrants, have rights issues, have very potentially dilutive dynamics to their balance sheet.
But financing alternatives are also getting a lot more sophisticated. We're now seeing things like streaming deals, for instance, like borrowing miles from mining. Do you see this as a trend and, you know, as a sign of consolidation? What do you think of the emergence of alternative financing options? And even, like, we've seen even some, like, very big debt facilities. Revolving debt.
I think that's exciting. I think that makes sense. I think that obviously comes part and parcel with, this is an industry that's, you know, as much as it's at its core, it's seen as a very basic kind of, you know, commodity on some level if you look at the actual underlying product, but this is a very sophisticated technical and scientific industry. We haven't really even talked about biopharma and the whole side of you know, the opportunities in the biopharma stuff. So yes, I think it's very important to understand, you know, how new forms of financing can actually create opportunities for investors to invest in less, you know, conventional but possibly more secure ways, different liquidity. You know, people are investing through blockchain, right? There are ways to actually invest where the liquidity of the marketplace is less important than the underlying value of the asset, and I think that's actually incredibly exciting.
So one last question. You mentioned one of your recommendations was like check filings, check financials. Now, most retail investors don't have the time to go through SEC filings or equivalent, and even if they do it, they are hard to understand, they're boring.
Right.
So how do you feel about ETFs? There's 2 ETFs right now, 2 big ones, at least in the US traded. How do you feel about ETFs, and what other options does a retail investor have
I think ETFs,
they want to cash in on cannabis legalization?
So when you talk about an ETF, why would someone buy an ETF? They buy an ETF because ultimately it's a diversified portfolio. You're not placing your bet in 2 stocks, 3 stocks, 4 stocks. Ideally, you're placing your bet in 25, 40 stocks. So yes, in terms of ETF investing in the cannabis sector, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think I could be critical of some of the products that are out now, but they're early stage products and they're going to evolve. So there's no reason to be critical. The bottom line is, if you want to buy an ETF right now, and there's a couple that trade in the US, you have an opportunity to have exposure across a number of different companies. Ultimately, ETFs should be actively managed. They should not be rebalanced quarterly or semi-annually or annually, which is effectively how they are now. You need to, between the way the regulatory environment is changing, between the technology environment and how it's changing, and obviously just how capital is flowing into the industry, ETF's a great idea. Invest with an ETF that's active and that ultimately I think is unlike when you buy an iShares ETF or something from State Street, a Spider ETF. Those are big index funds where, frankly, I don't really care who the portfolio manager is. In many cases, it's passive investing. If you're investing in an ETF that's investing in the cannabis sector, know who's managing the portfolio and understand really what's their expertise for actually being able to stay ahead of the trends. I think that's something that's very important here. It's very important in crypto and blockchain. I think it's very important in some of these leading edge industries and parts of the market, whether it's AI, whether it's gaming. I think it's very important that you're investing with folks that understand where the regulatory environment changes so quickly that you can be caught off sides overnight.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.